So many Americans either have left this country permanently or are planning on leaving America permanently. Why? Hang out with me today. You'll discover one of the main reasons. Welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about why so many Americans have left America and are leaving America. So let's start with an overview about what's going on. You know, right-wing media, like Fox News, would have you believe that the U.S. is the best at everything. Everything. Best healthcare system, best education system, best quality of life, so forth and so on, right? So naturally, many of those pundits often refer to America as the greatest country on earth, right? You hear it all the time. As far as they're concerned, there would be no reason for any American ever to leave this country, right? Well, then how come so many Americans who live outside the United States, called American expatriates, never want to come back? And why are so many more in the process of leaving? So where did these American immigrants go, and why? Let's start with where they go. 40% went to Canada, Central and South America, 26% of them ended up in Europe, and 14% went to East Asia and the Pacific. As far as why they leave America, lots of reasons. But basically it comes down to them seeking a better quality of life for themselves and their families that they couldn't find in America. You know, what many of us Americans don't realize is that the quality of life for citizens in many other developed and even developing countries is much higher than it is here in this country, according to major indicators. Now, when I say quality of life, I'm talking about things like work-life balance, affordable health care, affordable education for your kids, an affordable child care system, mandated maternity leave, mandated paternity leave, as well as mandated sick leave, which is not done at the national level in this country. It's state by state or company by company. All those items I just rattled off constitute a quality of life that average Americans can only dream of, but are available in the top 10 happiest countries in the world. How do I know? Check out the World Happiness Report that's created each year by the United Nations. Check out that report for 2020. This is what you'll find. Have a look at this picture. You know, we were all taught that America was the greatest country on earth, best at everything, right? So if that's the case, it would only follow that we Americans would be the happiest people on earth, right? We're not. In fact, we're below Costa Rica. The World Happiness Report, like I said, was developed by the United Nations, looks at 6 different variables that contribute to basic happiness. Stuff like citizens trusting their government to have their best interests at heart, life expectancy, and social welfare programs to keep citizens from falling through the cracks if they lose their job or if they get sick. All these things, in addition to some others, determine which countries create the best overall well-being for their citizens, and in turn create the happiest people in the world, right? Now, what was the happiest country in the world in 2020? Finland. And get this, the happiness ranking isn't just among the native citizens. The immigrants that moved to Finland, including Americans, are among the happiest in the world due to the way of life in that country. So now you have some clues as to why Americans are flocking out of the United States in record numbers. In fact, the number of American expatriates has more than doubled in the last 15 years. Okay, so let's take a detailed view now and look at what life is really like for American expatriates in their host countries that right-wing media outlets always label as socialist countries where their citizens are supposed to lead miserable lives, right? Okay, let's take a detailed view and see what's going on. Okay, let's start with Canada to see what life is like for Americans who either have lived in Canada or are currently living there, specifically because of their universal health care. So let me explain a little bit how the Canadian healthcare system works. First of all, nothing is free in life, right? So the healthcare system is not free. It's funded through a combination of personal and corporate taxation. As long as you have your healthcare card, you don't pay a dime. You don't pay a dime for most services, like doctor's visits, ultrasounds, and hospital stays. So while Canadians pay a little more in taxes, they get really good treatment, and it's way cheaper than the same care in America. We have taxes too, except they're not called taxes. They're called premiums, deductibles, and copays. Those are private taxes, but it's still a tax, okay? You know, Canada offers new mothers 1 year paid maternity leave. So that makes it easier for Canadian parents to look after their child without any financial worries, right? While American parents have to dump their newborns or toddlers in daycares and then have to find the money to pay the huge bill afterwards. Typically here in California, it's about $1,400 a month for an infant or toddler, right? Here's a quote from a former expatriate American. His name is Bill Mann, and he used Canadian healthcare. This is what he said, and I quote, "My wife and I have used the Canadian system for years, and we have been incensed by the lies we've heard back here in the United States about Canada's supposedly broken healthcare system. It's not broken. In fact, Canadians like and fiercely defend it. For example, our son was born at Montreal's Royal Victoria Hospital. My wife got excellent care. Our total bill for 3 days in a semi-private room was only $21. End of quote. Another expatriate quote. This one's from Art Finley, who was a West Virginia native now living in Vancouver, Canada. And he says, and I quote, "I'm 82, I'm in excellent health. It cost me just $57 a month for my health care, and it's excellent. I'm so tired of all the lies and bullshit I hear about the Canadian healthcare system in the US media." End of quote. To validate the statements you've just heard and how much Canadians really like their healthcare system, check this out. A while back, the national broadcaster, the CBC, asked Canadians to nominate and vote for their favorite Canadian. Vote for the greatest Canadian ever. Who won? Tommy Douglas. Who's Tommy Douglas? Tommy Douglas was a Canadian politician and the father of Canada's universal healthcare system. And it's not just Canada that Americans move to for a higher quality of life that affordable healthcare makes possible. Let's watch this video now about an American expatriate with diabetes living in the UK.
I want to talk to those millennials and honestly ask them, when they're looking at the United Kingdom and they're seeing the pain and the devastation that comes from socialized healthcare, is that what you want?
I'm from the United States. I now live in the United Kingdom. I grew up living with type 1 diabetes. I paid quite a lot for my insulin and my supplies and all the things that I need. When I graduated from college, I was off my parents' insurance plan at the time. This was before the Affordable Care Act kicked in. I had to pay a lot of money to be added onto my dad's insurance. I was paying about $1,000 out of pocket every month. Eventually, I got accepted to a master's degree program in the UK, and just being a student here for 6 months allowed me to take advantage of the healthcare system. I was covered under the national healthcare system. I went to the pharmacy and I picked up my prescriptions, and I didn't have to pay a huge amount, and that was just really mind-blowing to me. I don't think I'll ever forget that experience. I was just filled with gratitude and in awe of the simplicity of it as well.
Nobody pays a doctor's bill on the NHS. People will go their entire life without paying a single upfront cost.
Is that what you want? Because that is what is coming to the United States if you continue to vote for far-left leaders like Bernie Sanders.
People who live in the UK, they pay their taxes, so they're supporting the healthcare system, but then they are supported themselves. You don't have to battle with insurance companies. You don't have to spend hours thinking about your coverage and where and how you're going to get your essential medicine.
Let me talk to those millennials, like you said, the majority of whom voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016. I want the millennials who think that they love socialism so much to look at what's going on in the UK and see their own future.
When patients come to us, we only evaluate them from the point of view of their need. The cost never comes into it. As a surgeon, I love that because it means the focus is on the care that I can deliver.
Is that what you want?
Another story. This one's from a lady named Jennifer Still, a writer for Insider.com, talking about her life in the UK. And I quote from her, "I feel incredibly fortunate to live in a country with a public universal healthcare system, something the US doesn't have. In the US, my insurance plan was basically, just hope you don't get sick, or prepare to pay a fortune for testing and treatments. Now I can actually afford to seek professional care thanks to the national healthcare system in England." End of quote. And here's a story about an American expatriate living in Mexico. Lane Simmons lives in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. The health care he received there actually convinced him to move to Mexico permanently. This is his story. His wife slipped in Mexico and needed surgery that Simmons figured out would cost about $30,000 in the United States. He didn't have that kind of money. The doctor in Mexico said, "Don't worry about the cost." The doctor worked out a deal with the hospital, the anesthesiologist, and the neurosurgeon for his wife. The plan to pay for it was that Simmons would have to just drop off $500 a month for the next 10 months to the restaurant owned by the orthopedist's mother. He did, and he decided right then to become an American expatriate living in Mexico. Lane said, and I quote, "When I was in the United States, I paid outrageous healthcare premiums. I tried never to go to the doctor because even with insurance, it was still a big expense. In addition, I was so scared of the cost of needing something major. In Mexico, I can afford to go to GPs and specialists without a second thought. So I go often now and get more health care." which I'm starting to need and appreciate. End of quote. Okay, so what's the takeaway from all these stories you've just heard, right? You know, I could go on and on with more stories about American lives in other countries, but I wanted to just get my point across as to why so many of us Americans are leaving our shores. Healthcare is a big reason. You know, life in America has become brutally hard for many Americans. I think that after 1980, this country was repurposed to benefit corporations and the 1%, way more than the average Americans. Any talk of Medicare for all, or free K through university, or universal child care was labeled as socialist, right? Why was it labeled that way? That word has been, is currently, and will always be used by the right wing to scare off uninformed Americans for voting for politicians that would support the programs I discussed before. Universal health care, universal child care, mandated vacation, mandated paternity leave and maternity leave, and mandated sick leave. All those programs, right? Those programs would help relieve an enormous amount of financial suffering. Look, everyone always tries to improve their life, especially when times are tough. Trust me, all the caravans of people at our southern border, people coming from Honduras or Guatemala or other countries in Central and South America, they didn't want to uproot themselves, their families, and risk losing their lives going to a new country. However, just like in my own family history, political and economic conditions for these migrants became intolerable for them to stay in their own country. The American expatriates that I discussed today live where they do because their host country provides them with a quality of life so they can live out their remaining years in relative peace due to minimal economic stress, at least relative to what Americans face every year. Here in America, for so many of us, a personal financial situation is always at risk, primarily due to ending up in a hospital. That's why I discuss so many stories of Americans experiencing healthcare in other countries today. And these American expatriates who have left for other countries, they're not going to come back unless we have universal healthcare and all the other programs these other countries offer to give their citizens a higher quality of life, right? Who can blame them? Why would you want to come back? Who needs the daily stress of maybe losing your life savings by ending up in a hospital or having to go into huge debt for college education or paying thousands of dollars each month for daycare expenses? You know, we need to stop listening to and believing right-wing propaganda in this country. It just makes so many of us vote against our own and our family's economic self-interest. So as I come to the end of the show, now you know why so many Americans are becoming expatriate Americans. And again, who can blame them? That's the show for today. Balancing the Scales will be on hiatus for the next 4 months, coming back on the first week of June. I'll be working on a book project related to the topics that I present on the show. So I'll be back on June 3rd with more stories about economic justice and injustice in America.